So today we're going to take a look at adding and subtracting radicals. We looked at multiplying radicals where we always just multiply the outside and the inside. And adding and subtracting is a little bit different because here what we need to pay attention to is that we have the same radical, the same number inside that square root. Kind of similar to when we put together like terms, that same idea applies here. So these two numbers, we can add them because they have the exact same radical. And so when we add them, we're going to add the things on the outside and keep that like part the same. We're not going to do anything to that. Another important thing to remember is that if you don't see any number out in front of the radical, you can always assume that there's a 1 there. So when we put these first two together, we're actually adding 1 and 5 and then keeping that radical the same, so it would still be square root of 2. So our answer for this first one will be 6 times the square root of 2. Okay, when we jump down to this next one, again, we're going to add the things on the outside, so 6 and 3, and then keep that radical the same. So this answer will come out to 9 times the square root of 5. Okay, let's take a look at this next problem. Now, remember, we can only put together things that are like terms or have that same radical. And in this problem, you'll notice that these two radicals are the same, which means we can add those two terms. Notice this one is square root of 5. We can't put it together with anything else. So we're going to combine these two that are similar, and we're going to get 6 times the square root of 7. Now remember, this one is not the same, so we can't add it there. So we're actually not going to do anything to it, just leave it the same. And this is going to be your answer for this one. Make sure that if your answer comes out to have two different parts to it, make sure that they are different numbers in that radical. Make sure they can't be simplified anymore, that maybe they can go together, we just haven't simplified them enough. But 7 and 5 are both prime numbers, so we can know to stop here. Okay, here are two more examples. Now I want you to notice that these two examples are very similar. The only difference is that one of them is two different radicals that are being added together, and one is two numbers inside a radical. So be careful about how you approach these. Remember that if I want to add radicals, they have to be the like term, so they have to have that same radical part to them. These two are not the same, so right now it looks like we can't put them together. But make sure you simplify them. See if maybe they can be simplified to have the same. And this is actually 3, right? 9 squared. Square root of 16 is 4. Well, those both come out to whole numbers. So when we add those together, they follow the rules of whole numbers and actually equal 7. If we're adding numbers inside a square root, we're going to just add them together, but leave them in that square root. So this will become the square root of 25. Now we want to always make sure that we simplify our answer. Well, the square root of 25 is actually the square root of 5 times 5. And you'll notice there's 2 of them, which means our final answer is going to just be 5. Be really careful how you approach these, because notice even though they look very similar, their answers are different numbers. So be careful about if we're adding two radicals or we're adding two numbers inside that radical. Okay, so for this last example, I want you to be really careful and pay attention to the operations that we're using. Remember, our rules about multiplying or adding and subtracting are not the same. So we need to be careful about what operation we're doing. The first two here we see are multiplied together. Now remember, for multiplication, we just multiply the things together and put them under that same square root. So we could rewrite this as the square root of 7 times 7. I'm going to add this on the end so we don't forget about that last part. Now, simplify it. We see 2 7s in here, which means they come out, and we're going to have nothing left in the square root. But we still want to add that square root of 7. Now, in order to add square roots, they have to be like terms or have that same radical. These don't have the same radical, so we actually can't add them any more than we have here. Make sure that if your answer has more than one term, that they're not the same radical, that number inside the square root, and they can't be simplified to be something else. And 7 is a prime number, so we can't simplify it any further.